And I love old tractors. I actually own two antique tractors and go to shows. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much for sharing. So, do me a favor. Take us up right up to speed, but let's start from the very beginning. You mentioned that there was betrayal in your marriage. So, what type of betrayal happened and how did it occur?
Well, I got married at 20 years old and did not know when I got married that he was a pornography addict and had a horrific wedding night. Um, he masturbated in front of me on our honeymoon. Then there was marital rape. There was emotional, mental, sexual, financial, spiritual abuse in the marriage. There was physical abuse to our children, as well as um, sexual grooming. And by that, I mean, with our oldest daughter, he touched her places to see what her reaction would be. And I believe that was also going on with my other three children as well. And yes, I feel like I need to put this in here, not for sympathy, but because I have five children, but then I only talk about four of them. And that is because one of my children did die. So when you hear me say, yes, I have five children, then I only talk about four. It's like, well, wait a minute. She said five. So where's the fifth one? And that's why. Um, so I heard my husband say things to my oldest daughter, like when you wear that, it makes me want to have sex with you. And he said things to my younger daughter that she was concerned that she wasn't pretty. She's absolutely beautiful, but I'm her mother, so I can think that, right? Um, but she was concerned she wasn't pretty, and so he told her that she was going to grow up to be a beautiful, sexy woman. And, these are things that no father should be thinking about their child, nor should they ever be saying it to their child. But it was what happened in my home. And um, I have a lot of things that I regret, but I also did a lot of things right. And I have made a lot of things right. I lost relationship with my oldest daughter and my oldest son with my oldest daughter, because I was married to her father. As long as I was married to him, she would have nothing to do with me. But as soon as I told her that I was divorcing him, she called me within 5 minutes, and we've been building our relationship ever since. And my oldest son was told that I was the reason the marriage fell apart, and he believed that. And so and when I tried to tell him the truth, he did not want to hear the truth, and he quit talking to me. But I've been rebuilding relationship with him now for a little over a year. So I feel very blessed that my two older children have been gracious to me, and my that father really has been gracious to me and allowed me to regain those relationships with my children, because I know that that does not always happen.
For some parents out there, they're probably hearing your story and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe this has happened. Because a lot of people can't imagine one, doing it, and two, that it actually happens. So you mentioned the journey of how this person started off from the day you got married and they were satisfying themselves and pleasuring themselves all the way up until later on in it where there was inappropriate comments to the children, behaviors to yourself. What were the signs, or were there any signs earlier on, let's say maybe before the marriage, that you look back now and you're like, okay, I missed out on that one?
Yeah, there were signs, but like you said, I missed them. No, I grew up in a conservative Christian home. Um, it's called Oldham Baptist Brethren Church. It's similar to Amish and Mennonite. The women wear a little white covering and cape dresses. And um, that's how my former spouse was also raised. And I thought, by all appearances, he was godly. He read his Bible. He talked about reading his Bible. He talked about doing Bible study and praying and, um, you know, by all appearances to myself and to others, he treated me really well. But there were a few things that made me uncomfortable, but I couldn't put it into words what it was, nor had I been taught to listen to my intuition and to listen to my, to when something doesn't feel right, to examine why it doesn't feel right and figure that out. Um, and I was also taught that um, once you're married, especially that you are submissive and he is the head of the home. And to be fully transparent, I probably took that a little far. Um, but that's some of the things that I regret, teaching my children to respect him no matter what, respecting him myself no matter what, until one day I had a light bulb moment and things started to change.
And you shouldn't be necessarily blaming yourself, because how many people, once they get into a marriage, they view it a certain type of way. There's like a structure in their mind.
Mhm.
For those who are religious, they understand that there's the headship, right? There's, then there's God, there's the man, then there's the woman, then there's the children. And I think in general, a lot of people have an idea of what their marriage wants to look like, and then reality hits and it's something totally different,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
But the difference is still a version of, maybe for lack of a better word, the fantasy in their mind, or the reality perhaps they've thought of. But for you, it sounds like it was a complete 180, something so far different. And you come from a unique position because, as you mentioned, you're religious, you have the faith. So, in a lot of ways, that's supposed to be your protection, right?
Mhm.
Like, how many times, because I grew up in the church as well, like how many times are we taught that the religion is to keep away these things, is to shield us, right? But here you have a man that is treating you in a way that is contradicting what you were told it was supposed to be. Was there a battle for you to maybe try to find a balance between what you're taught and what you're seeing, and if you should continue forward in this type of relationship, knowing that it's not what you're being shown, but yet you still want to be true to what you were taught?
Yes, and that is some of why I stayed for so long. I was married to him for 23 years. The divorce was just final in February of this year. And we left the Old German Baptist many years ago. And I began to study divorce and began to understand that divorce is not wrong and that God doesn't hate divorce. He hates the abuse that leads to divorce. So we have the Old Testament, the first 5 books of the Bible. Moses gives divorce to the Israelites. And then in some of the prophets, it's talked about divorce. And what he truly hates is the abuse that leads to divorce. And then Jesus backs that up with, um, you may divorce for these things. Adultery, it doesn't specifically use abuse, but there's that whole list of things that he says does make divorce okay. It is okay to be divorced. And while I began to understand that and to agree with that, and to my beliefs changed to, I don't have a problem with divorce and I don't have a problem with people remarrying once they are divorced, it wasn't for me. Like, I was okay with it for others, but I it wasn't for me. And that created a problem for me because I was holding on so tight to restoration. I wanted my marriage to be restored, that I couldn't see that there was a way out for me. And it wasn't until I started I'm very transparent. So full transparency here. My former spouse knows this. I told him this. I actually started praying that something would happen. Like there could be a one car accident. He's the only one in the vehicle, one car accident, his life could be over. And I started praying for that to happen. And when that didn't happen, then I changed my prayer to this is so painful. It hurts so bad. I just want to be out. I just want this to end. I want my pain to end. I want my marriage to end. And clearly, you're not doing what I've prayed for. So there has to be another way. And then, soon after, I changed my prayer again to when can I be released from my marriage? It was like 3 months after I started praying that he gave me 3 witnesses in one day that I was released from my marriage. And there was actually a fourth witness that she wouldn't like being called a witness because she doesn't agree with divorce and remarriage. But what she said to me really made me think, and it completely hit me wrong. And so when I told him I wanted a divorce and that I'd had these 3 witnesses and that I'd talked with this other person, um, it was like a huge relief. It was a huge relief to me to know that this was all going to end, not knowing at the time that it was going to take 2.5 years, but I still there was somewhat of an end in sight now.
And when you look at the situation where he's trying to groom the children, making sexual comments, being sexually inappropriate with them, with you, and now you're praying for something to happen to him. Now you're looking to escape this marriage. Was there a sense of shame that the day that you do escape this marriage, would someone else want you? Or would friends want to be around you? Or how would life look like after you escape the marriage?
Oh, I love that question. So, I had to, at the point that I finally divorced him or started the divorce proceedings, I had been very intentional about building support systems for my children and I. So we had been separated at one point, and he came back home because I didn't have support systems. I was told that I was hurting the church. I was hurting my children because he wasn't in the home. And so I let him come back home, and he never should have. But I ended up making him move out a second time because he choked our oldest son to the point of blackout. And I said, you have to move out and you have to get counseling. You have to take management classes. Whatever it is, you have to get help. And he never moved back home. Um, so at that point, I had started to intentionally build support systems around myself for myself and my children. And so I knew that I had support in place when I started the divorce proceedings, that there was going to be people that would pray with me, that would speak truth into my life, that if, and this never happened, but if I was like, this is too much, this is too hard, I'm just going to go back, that they would be like, no, no, sister, you're not going back to that. No, I had those kind of people in my life. Um, was I concerned that no one would want me? Yes. Quite frankly, I felt so broken, so damaged. Like, why would anybody want me? I have been through this, these yucky things. Why is anyone ever going to want me? And again, thankfully, I had people in my life that when I said this to them, they were like, are you kidding me, Beth? Like, you're amazing. You're beautiful. Any man would be so blessed to have you as his wife. And I just had to sit back and let those words really truly sink deep into my heart and do the healing work to get to the place that I believed them myself.
And that's the problem with like abuse, right? Especially on the woman's side, because majority of the time, if there's a breakdown of the marriage and the children go with the mother,
Mhm.
right? So if there's an abusive situation and you're fleeing it or you're escaping it, you have the abuse, you have the trauma, you have the children who are impacted by, right? And there's a lot of people out there, they're going to look at you and say, you know, Beth, this is too much for me. I wish you all the best, but it's too much for me. Whereas you're going to have people that's around you that are very close. They're going to cheer you on like your friends did, right? Of course, people would want you, Beth. They want to build up your confidence because the last thing that you want to happen is that you start to believe you won't be able to find love ever again. And as you were married for all these years, did you ever think that you would want to be loved again?
Well, it's my experience as I have talked to women who have been sexually betrayed by their husband, whether it's a pornography addiction, whether it or some other form of acting out, visiting prostitutes, whatever it is. Um, we all tend to go through this phase of all men are this way. And I am never going to get remarried. I am never going to, men, I don't want nothing to do with them. And it seems, it's my experience that we all go through this phase. And so when a woman starts saying that to me, I'm like, okay, that's okay. That's where you are right now. But let me just tell you, that's going to change. You're going to heal. You're going to get to the point that, oh, maybe he's kind of cute. Or I like his personality. You're going to get to that point that you're going to realize that all men aren't like this. All men are not going to betray you. And there might actually be someone out there that would love me the way I need and want to be loved.
When you're saying that and when you're speaking to those women, it's one thing to say it and it's one thing to believe it. Which
Mhm.
one do you think was harder, saying it or believing it, or maybe both?
It took a lot of work. Took a lot of healing work for me to get to the point that um, that I could look at a man without thinking, I bet you're just like my former spouse. Or I'm sure you look at pornography, all men do. It took a lot of healing and a lot of in being very intentional because I know there's good men out there. They exist. I know that. I know that now, and I knew that then, and I believe these women also know it, but we're so hurt. We're so broken, if you will, that for a time we can't see that there are good men out there. Even though we know some of them ourselves, we still can't reconcile that this happened to me by a man